Got it. Got it. Oh, shoot. Is it still recording?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Let's see this
What does it say?
previous meeting.
Oh, that's okay. You're live.
Okay, great.
We could just-
Okay, as long as it's working correctly, that's fine. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We just went live on YouTube, so we can begin the meeting now. January 19th, 2022. Welcome to the Town Board of Unionville's Town Board meeting. First, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everybody to please join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Everyone, please be seated. So our first order of business tonight is to approve the minutes for the December 16th, 2021 meeting. I know the town clerk distributed those all to town board members. If there are no corrections or changes to the minutes, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, minutes are approved for December 16th. Now I'll go through the town supervisor's report. The first thing I'd like to say, or a couple of interesting things. We had the year is closed for 2021. From a cash flow perspective, we were at 110% of our revenue projections. So we were 10% over what we projected, which is always great. And we were only at 89% of our revenue, our expense projections. So again, that's the trajectory I always like to see from a managerial perspective. Our team does a really good job of staying within their budget lines and then trying to do, outperform wherever they can. And the market certainly helped us some this year because of our mortgage tax and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So our end of the year final report won't be ready for at least another month because we have bills that are still come in that are 2021. And so we always go through them. But we did have an attractive year. We had some good standouts. The clerk fees, 154% of budget so far. Not all the bills are in, but congratulations.
Very good, Andrew.
Summer camp was up 14%, higher than we expected. Facility rentals was 44% higher than we budgeted. The equestrian center had the biggest year in history, up 56% from what was budgeted. So that's really outstanding. Also, our pool fees for the first time ever were up 329%. So that was really a big success this year. Mortgage tax, as I said, was 214%. So we budgeted 130,000. Right now we're at 277, 870. We may be even higher because sometimes we'll get that last payment and credit it towards 2021. Anyway, we were under budgeting. We under budgeted or reached 89% of expenses. So we looked really good. The year-to-date budget was 3.276 and we came in at 3.174. This is not final because we have bills still coming, but I will give you a final report probably in another month, maybe March at the latest if things are late in February. From a cash balance perspective, in the general fund, we now have a balance of $1,822,612. And the highway fund has $328,476. Now, remember, that's different from last month, during which the general fund had $3,625,000. And now it's at 1.8. And that's because, as we discussed at the town board meeting, we took a series of items and moved them into the capital projects fund. Projects that haven't been approved yet, but that we allocated certain dollars amount that we were saving money for, like the dam. And all of that has been moved into a separate account called capital projects and allocated for those. And as we start getting bids and quotes and going through the process, we'll be reviewing those. Those numbers will change a little. Hopefully, maybe they'll come down, which would be great. I also wanted to let everybody know that we have a new tax collector. I'm sure you know from the election. Her name is Kay Saglabeni. The tax bills went out in the mail yesterday, the 18th. Now, except for that first year in 2018, remember they had this special deal going where we mailed them out in December. The tax clerk reminds me that they typically go out around the third week of January. Given that it was Kay's first year, I think that was advantageous for her as well. But I also want you to know the first day after we have something in our financial policies because of some of the problems that have happened in other municipalities. And there was an extreme example where a tax collector didn't pay her own taxes for 10 years and they never knew. So that can happen. I don't know how it happens, but anyway, we put in our financial policies several years ago that the tax collector, one of the first things a tax collector had to do was bring proof that she or he had paid their taxes. So I already have Kay Saglabeni's check and I have her tax bill and I have shown that it was deposited. We'll watch for it to clear the bank, but our tax collector's on it on the first day. Just want you to know. She's doing a nice job getting everybody situated and ready, and she followed town policy. The next thing, later in the agenda, we're going to have some interesting reports, and I'm going to read this now because we don't have to read it later. But I mentioned this at either in an earlier meeting at a work session. But we got a grant, which was a terrific thing from NYSERDA. And the email reads, congratulations. According to our records, the town of Unionville recently completed 4 high-impact actions under NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program. Your community is hereby named a Clean Energy Community by NYSERDA and is eligible for a designation grant in the amount of $5,000. We're going to be talking about it later. The CAC, the town board, in one of our sessions said, why don't we let the CAC review the list and come back with a suggestion for us? And they indeed have done that. We have to submit the grant for the request for the 5,000, but they are going to give us a grant of 5,000. And the CAC, they were here last night. I mean, we were on Zoom last night until 9 or 9:30, very late, going through the final details. They're a wonderful group. I mean, the only thing is we miss Aki because Aki did such a great job as chair, but now Jen Rubo is chair. And later in the agenda, I'll give you updates as to what they would like to recommend that the town board does with that money. And because we have so many policies to review and discuss tonight, I'm gonna stop there and immediately go to board member reports, and then we'll get into the heart of the meeting. Councilman McGivney, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Derlin?
Sure. Me and Betsy have been working on, got that?
Sorry, that was me.
All right, so Betsy, me and you obviously have been working on the little issue we were having with like planning board and trying to maybe expand the pool of candidates, because being the chairman of the planning board for a number of years, we always had an issue getting qualified candidates or willing candidates. So we're actively discussing ways to increase the pool of people that we can draw from.
That's great. Thank you. And we have that on.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that's under a discussion on new business. All right. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Walsh?
Yes, I've been working with the supervisor, talking about our library plans for the future, and basically in the discussions, it's come to the concept that we really need to get some professional advice. We need to get a consultant that can really steer us in the best possible direction to benefit our residents. We do this right is the bottom line. We got to do it as well as we can do it. So I think as we discuss, a consultant would be very appropriate.
Yeah. I think we have
also, I've been reviewing all the policies of the town so that we can make any changes that may be necessary or approve what we have.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that's a lot. I know a lot of work. Councilman Gusikoff.
Yes, I'm working on a project about getting a new working recycling center. Since it's the middle of the winter, a lot of these places that sell sheds and stuff, we want to try and renovate a shed that would be a good working space for 2 people to keep records and maybe probably better quality of life for them while they're in there in the summertime and the winter time. So talking about re-insulating it, windows for working with the people coming in, a whole host of things that would work. It's actually coming in way under budget of what we were speaking about with one of those, like a toll booth or something. So do we have a structure? We have to purchase a structure. Do you have one?
I got a line.
Oh, you do?
Oh,
Okay,
excellent.
so
Oh, great.
now we're really on the budget.
Yeah.
So-
I'll send some pictures.
He's just gonna charge us a lot to tow it over.
That's great. I mean,
So we're doing well with that. It's preliminary right now, but as things go forward, it's
That's
something that we're gonna
fantastic.
get together for the spring.
we just put a new heater in there because the heater blew.
Mhm.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's frigid, but they had a little, small little area heater, but anyway, the new one came
Well,
in.
we have this spec'd out with heat and AC and everything, so.
That's
Should
really
work
helpful.
pretty well.
So in our earlier list, and these were not official quotes, but we went out on the internet, we're looking at various things, and the last number we had for that was around $20,000.
Yeah, we're coming in right now without Ed at $13,000, so.
That's
Oh,
great.
very
Okay,
good.
that's great. All right, so we will put that on our list of.
Especially with inflation, what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. Exactly. Okay, thank you, Councilman. That's
Sure.
great. Mr. Kading, anything you'd like to?
That was granddad, I'm Ed.
But you're superintendent, actually.
So, obviously, we've had a few ice storms, some events. So we've been using quite a bit of salt. As I mentioned last year, we've cut our salt with 25% stone dust. So we are trying to be a little more environmentally friendly and use less salt, but with these events, we have to put it down. So I don't know if any of the residents have noticed, but we've been pre-treating the last couple of storms, putting the salt down
Nice.
prior to the storms. That seems to work pretty well. Obviously, the state does it, the county does it. One of the main reasons I'm doing it is because with myself and just two other guys, we can do the whole town in about an hour and a half rather than bringing a whole crew in during the event. So we're cutting budget money doing it like that.
Great.
The garage at the highway department that the roof collapsed on is well underway. They supposedly will have the roof complete by tomorrow, weather dependent. And then the rest of it's all interior stuff. So hopefully that building will be 100% in about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
That's great.
So our trucks will be back inside. Another thing we're working on right now is I've hired a tree company to come out, and we're starting to take down some of the larger trees that our crew can't handle. And so we're working on that as well. So
And you're taking them down along the roads and stuff where
Yeah,
they're dangerous.
hazardous trees on the
Yeah.
road is what we're after.
Yeah,
So we've got some that some of the residents have targeted, some we've targeted. So we're trying to make the town as safe as we can. And as everybody knows, with the ash borer, we have a massive bunch of trees.
Oh, yeah, no shortage of
yeah.
dead trees
Sad.
around.
Mhm.
And then I know your highway crew, Mr. Pisano, is tracking all those numbers so that Girl Scouts will be able to
Yep.
plant our trees in our reforestation program next September.
Yeah, right now we're at about 15
Oh,
that have been taken down.
yeah, well, yeah, okay. It's early.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, next up, we have our town clerk report. Anything you'd like to go through?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to let everybody know that we have filed the local laws that the town passed regarding opting out of retail dispensaries and on-site consumption for cannabis. They have been not only sent to the state, but also to the Office for Cannabis Management as well, and both of them have been received. So we are in compliance.
Perfect. We hit all the deadlines. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Terrific. Okay, now we have public comment on agenda items. I have people here that have signed up to talk, public comment on agenda items.
Oh, we can do it now.
Is that
Okay.
you, Jane? Would you like to speak for, now, Jane,
Yes.
do you
Oh.
want, hey, Jane, I'm sorry, Mrs. Geisler, I should refer to you as, there's a computer here, if you don't mind sitting here, and then everybody else can hear you. Do you mind that?
Oh, I can be loud.
Or she can bring the computer over if that's, just don't let her fall. Oh, good. Great.
Nice, we have our daughter visiting from Alaska.
I know, and
We're very
I
pleased to see
didn't
you.
sign up. I have one sentence that I could share.
So why don't you share after your mom's finished? Okay.
Most everybody is satisfied with the library services they get from the Mid-Hudson system. It would be disastrously expensive to try to run a library independently. To complainers, I would say, look at how you pay for many things that you don't benefit from. Why pay for a consultant when taxpayers are satisfied with participating in the Mid-Hudson system? Will the consultant explore all possible options, including our independent proposal?
So Jane, just to clarify, the proposal is to be part of the Mid-Hudson Library System.
It will include that, okay?
Yes,
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
it would just
Yeah,
be
it's
part
not
of
gonna
it.
be separate.
No, it wouldn't be separate. No, it's part of the system.
Which involves payment. You have to pay a little to participate.
Jane,
It's-
just a minute. Are
It's
you
Jane,
saying-
it's not, you get chartered and you're part of the system. But part of the Mid-Hudson Library System. But the fees to belong to that system aren't that much. They have various services
That's
you can
right,
purchase.
that's
Yeah, it's not
right.
that much. Okay? Did you, I think her daughter's gonna speak,
She's gonna help her move.
Yeah.
but you're gonna come on up and sit too, right? Great.
I have aged.
She runs fast.
She runs fast.
Yes, my mom was born in 1923.
Yay.
Well,
She-
by the time she aged a little bit.
So then I graduated from Millbrook, but I'm Carol Geisler. My married name is Schlentner, but I'm Carol Geisler, and I just wanted to make sure, that's what I wanted to make sure, that we were going to be part of the Mid-Hudson Valley system, because if you're not part of the Mid-Hudson Valley library system, it's like going to a restaurant and not having any food in the restaurant. You have to be, that is a vital part of the whole thing. And I wanted to make sure that was understood. And I didn't know that until right this minute. I
Oh,
just
good.
thought that it was going to be a private library and that all you could do is borrow the books that were in the library. And that wouldn't
No, that was
No.
not it, no.
make sense at all.
We agree completely.
Yeah. And I, as a librarian at Lakeman Chumana, which is a community of about 20 people, we got our own library, but it didn't really help us because when we didn't have the library, we got all Alaska state books came from all over Alaska or even from Washington, and we could get them mailed to us. But once we became a library, we had to get a grant and buy all our books. So I hope you look into what happens with having your own library, because we didn't know that. We didn't know that being your own library deprived you of having more access to things. So I guess that's what the library consultant's gonna
Yeah.
do.
It's the opposite here, and he's gonna.
It is
guide
the
us so we
opposite
get the
here.
Most for our money, most for the
Okay.
residents.
He's going to help us hear from all the residents.
Okay, well, anyway, the
Thank you.
library is very important.
Thank you. Okay, thanks so much. Lolita Malik, would you like to speak now?
Yes, I would.
Wait a minute, hold on, sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay, now I think, we can. Yes.
Alrighty. I just wanted to kind of point out, that one of the last time I was on the call, I noticed that you and Councilman John were all referring to the fiscal responsibility our town has had, and we are doing very, very well on everything, except I disagree with having our own library, and I just want to make my thoughts known. I mean, you mentioned that there are people on fixed income, and therefore we don't want to be able to contribute to the other libraries to support us. And I just wanted to point out that every resident who has a job or pension, social security or whatever is on a fixed income. And businessmen who have to deal with variable incomes have to deal with the fact that incomes go up and down. Bottom line is that none of us want our taxes to go up. They are high enough as it is. Now, one of the reasons that we are doing with the big problem with taxes is that we've been moving to the shared resources model, where we are sharing resources and equipment with the other towns and neighboring towns and personnel also to cut down costs. And it just kind of seems like an unnecessary thing that we can share the libraries that already exist instead of having to put our own in. And if we can't afford to pay the other towns our share and we have to freeload, how can we afford to pay for our own library? The other thing which I don't understand and I'd like to get some clarification on is, if you're going to pay per card holder, we have to figure out how many card holders there are and how you're going to bill them. Are you going to have separate bills per household with people who have card holders? And if the one household has about 5 or 6 members, are they going to have to pay more per person? I mean, right now we just, regardless of finding people live in a house, we just pay a flat income, property tax, whatever it is. And again, if you want to keep the taxes in, and what's going to be the cost of implementing a system where you're going to have to figure out number of card holders and pay per them? But I'm assuming that since that's what we want to do with the other libraries, when we have our own library, we're going to go by the same system, so everybody doesn't have to pay for a library they don't want to use. Now, if you want to keep the taxes in town, is the consultant going to be a resident of Unionville? And when we get the grant to build the library, will it come with an endowment so that to run the library, whatever it is, we don't have to burden the taxpayers to pay for it forever? And again, I mean, we can do simple math to know that it's cheaper to have a shared resources versus a private resource. So do we really need to spend the money on a consultant to tell us that?
Is that everything?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I would say that there is a lot of misinformation in what you just said, which I think underscores the need for somebody to come in and listen to all the residents, not just people that are frequent flyers at the town board meetings. And there's a lot of people that have opinions that don't have the time or can't come here. So I think it'll help us all, and I think it'll help get everybody engaged, and that's one of the reasons we're doing it. And then I think all that information that you had in there that may have been mistaken, I couldn't understand everything you said, but you had a few things in there I know not to be accurate. We'll iron that out as we go through the process. Okay. So next up we have Jean Moore.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want the town board to know that I and many other residents of our town oppose this resolution for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that when I walked the neighborhood in our town to discuss the library proposition in October, over 90% of the residents I talked to did not want the town to build its own library. They all expressed the opinion that the town should pay a fee to use neighboring libraries that are convenient for them to use and less expensive than building a town library. Proof of this statement being accurate is backed up by the library survey during Betsy's report in April of 2017 as the chair of the library steering committee. Of almost 200 respondents to the survey, only 2 residents wanted the town to build a library in our town, which means less than 1% of them wanted a Unionville library town building. Now, however, I want to point out that it would be a violation of the agreement of the deed of covenant signed by the town and the Connors to build a library at Timor Park. The agreement between the Connors and the town of Unionville prohibits the use of the park for a library, especially one that would draw a lot of traffic and no non-residents to the park. The fact that we have different town officials in office now, rather than those who were in office when the deed of covenants was signed by the town officials and the Connors, does not give our town the right to disregard the wishes of the Connors, who trusted our town to live up to the agreement they all made. Some may say the covenant has already been broken by modifying it for the town hall construction and by letting the international soccer team stay at our park and by having the DC Balloon Festival use the park for 2 years. So it should be okay to build a library. But it is not okay to not live up to a signed agreement with the Connors, who gave the park to our town with the provision in the deeds of covenant that stated that the land, quote, shall be dedicated in perpetuity to the recreation and nature conservancy uses of the people resident to the town of Unionville, unquote. The master plan for Timor Park, excuse me, was developed and approved in 2004 and is on the town website. In the
20
management
seconds,
plan.
Jean. 20
What?
seconds, just to let you know, you have 3 minutes, 20 seconds.
Okay, there is a management plan on the town website, and I think people should read that, especially town officials, because it is obvious that Connors would not want a library at Timor Park.
Okay, that is so unbelievably inaccurate, Jean. I'm sorry, I have to correct you now. And I will say that first of all, everybody knows that Ralph Connor wanted a library in Timor Park. We have 2 handwritten letters from him where one of the locations was proposed right down in one of the barns, and he loved the idea. The other proposal in a handwritten letter from Don Wisman to him suggested the house at number 2. He loved that idea. Frankly, the man loved any idea where there was a thought of putting in a library. There is nothing in the covenant that says that a library is prohibited. Nothing whatsoever. So please don't start rumors that are inaccurate. All right. So now, that being said, I think that there was an election and there was a referendum on the ballot, and 56% versus 44 voted the ballot down. It's still a very important question that we have to get to the bottom of. All right, which is it's worth us doing some due diligence for those people that voted it down. What is it they would like to have happen? And we need to go through the process to be fair to everybody. You come to the meetings, you like to share your opinion, but there are many, many people out there that will never come to a meeting, but have very strong opinions about it. We need to hear from them too. So let's be fair and get out there and have somebody pull out those comments from everybody, and let's see where we are. It's a smart thing to do. We have to do due diligence. It's part of our job. All right, next up. Thank you though, Jean. I don't see anybody else on that signed up for this section. So
Elfrida's
we
raising
will
her hand.
move, she's not signed up.
Just fast, where is the money coming from for this consultant?
We're going to talk about that at you're going to follow the agenda tonight. So just sit tight and we'll get there. Okay. Yeah, no, we're get there. We're not at that part yet, but we're coming. Okay. Next up would be our board reports. Let's start with recreation. Councilwoman Givney, could you give us the recreation report? Thank you.
This is a report by Allison Croak. We are happy to be able to offer full-day TGCT program when both Millbrook and Arlington School District elementary schools went remote after their winter break. We've had several children sign up each day, and the parents all expressed gratitude for our program. We were able to take the kids out sledding on the Big Hill, which was a big hit. We've been working on summer camp planning and programming. Registration is currently open at unionvalerec.com. We're excited to offer kids camp, traditional camp, and a new teen leadership program, formerly the counselor and training program. We will be busy in the upcoming months as we continue our after school program and TGTT days, and moving forward with all the planning that goes into summer camp.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, our parks report. Councilman Gusikoff, thank you.
Yes, this is from Jake Costello. The
You got, I
park
think-
manager. Happy New Year to everyone.
Perry, you got to unmute.
Okay. This is from Jake Gosnell, Parks Manager. Happy New Year to everyone. We are in full winter mode, and the winter has kicked in with a couple of snow and ice storms already. We are working on catching up on some inside projects in all of our buildings and some great outdoor projects that we are looking forward to as well in the coming weeks. Summer camp registration is open, and I'm happy with all of the new and exciting ideas that our recreation department are trying out. And just a reminder to everyone who comes to enjoy the sleigh riding at the park, please be sure to park in either the town hall parking lot or the parking lot and not along the road. Also, some people have figured this out, but it is still a great hill right behind the town hall. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I will say those, they just opened up the summer camp registration this week and it took off right away. So people are getting prepared. Next up, the constable's report, Councilor Welsh.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is a constable
Unmute.
report.
Yeah.
Constable for December 2021. Constables patrolled approximately 628 miles of town roads.
Say yes to that, Ron.
Okay. Constables patrolled approximately 628 miles of town roads, including all town properties, filling the Explorer with 88.6 gallons of gasoline. The 3 town court dates totaled 49 cases on the dockets with 27 actual appearances. There were no incidents to report. Constables had no incidents to report during the patrols in the month of December due to being assigned to Christmas lights for the majority of the shifts. Additional note, constables completed 33 nights of traffic detail to Christmas lights on December 28th. There were 6 nights of very heavy traffic where cars were diverted down Bloomer Road to create one-way traffic pattern for light goers to view the display while allowing residents to use Bloomer as normal as possible under the busy conditions. Other than a minor traffic accident at the entrance of the driveway and the normal interactions between constables providing directions and keeping traffic flowing, there were no incidents to report. Respectfully submitted, George Treadwell, Constable in charge. I'm surprised there's no mention in here of the constable training on December 10th. I think they all had
He
training.
covered that in the December meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, the 16th, because that was
Okay.
the first weekend.
all right, okay.
He did meeting, and it did, and it was, you're right, it was a very good, it was a good training session.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Councilman, for reading those. Next up in our old business category is Dutchess County Workers' Compensation Plan. And I just wanted to go over what's transpired with Dutchess County. As painful as it was and as painstaking as this event has been for the last 3 years, almost 4 years. Dutchess County, when we got out of the plan, Dutchess County wanted us to pay them for what we call a very mismanaged workers' comp plan with 2 easily settled outstanding claims that were miscalculated by an actuary. They sent us a bill for $173,000. We have argued with them for 3 years, and we had an attorney show them the logic of the failure of their numbers and all that. I think where we ended up with was with a much bigger budget than we have, I might add, we ended up going to mediation. And in mediation, what ended up happening was we agreed to pay Dutchess County. Now, we agreed to this because the other side of the going to court with them didn't have a big enough payment back to us to make it worth it. So we agreed to pay Dutchess County $90,000 over 2 years. So it's going to be $45,000 each year, or they were going to take us to court. So we analyzed the pros and cons. The facts were all on our side, but if you lose in a workers' comp court, they charge you whatever that first bill was plus 9%. It's just, the trade-off wasn't worth it. So we have agreed to $45,000 each year. And now the cases are closed anyway. So the number was wrong to begin with. I'll say that forever. But basically we had to shut it down and get it closed, and we did, and we agreed to 45 and 45. So that's after the 3.5 years of struggle. That's where we are. And I think it's good to put it behind us and move on and make that money back some other ways. Now, the next subject up is bus safety program and court fines. Now, this is this topic, Councilman, we talked about this during our work session, and it's come up. New York State passed this bus safety law. Dutchess County passed the same law by the county legislature. They have agreed, and it's important that all the residents know. I think some of the parents with school children know, but other people aren't necessarily hearing about it. They are putting cameras on all the school buses with the arms that go out with the lights on them. They're putting cameras. So on especially these rural roads, cars are often going around school buses right when kids are crossing in the front. And apparently there were some very harrowing videotapes that they showed the county before the legislature passed this law. So basically what's happened is the way the law reads, the town, most of these people are going to just pay the fine, because when you get your letter, it's going to say, go to this website and look at the videotape we have of your car. Now, it's not a motor vehicle. It's not your typical motor vehicle, DMV. You're not going to get points for it. It is because the letter and the fine goes to the owner of the car. There's not a policeman pulling them over and writing them a ticket. It's a film. Okay. So there aren't any, there's a fine involved, but there's no points and it doesn't go on your record. Actually, I might be wrong. I think it does get on your record somewhere. It's just not by a policeman and it's not motor vehicle. But the first fine for this is $250, and then it goes to $350 and then $450 for the first, second, and third offense. Most people will pay the fine because you kind of can see with the picture, they've got you dead to rights. So that, you know, you're going to pay the fine and hopefully never do it again. Some people contest it. They said 3 to 5% in the whole county will contest it. And usually they contest it because they haven't gone to the video to see how bad that film is. So they just say, oh, it can't be true. So they contest it. It is the town board's job to figure out what we want to charge them in court fees when they contest it and they get sent to our courthouse, our courtroom around the corner. So we have been talking about this. We talked about it in our work session, and I think that getting some help from our justices is really critical. And I want to share with you what the last report I got from Paul Panko, which is good. So if it were a motor vehicle violation that goes on somebody's record, like a policeman had written him a ticket, there is a book that all the judges have that the state of New York tells them the minimum and maximum fine you can give somebody. So we referred to that book, and our judge looked at the book and said, here's what the fine, the court fine would be if they came into our courthouse for going around a school bus if a policeman had written them a ticket. And on the first offense is $150. The second offense is $300. And the $450 rather is the third offense. So what Judge Panko and we discussed today was proposing to the board that, remember, the $250 or whatever they have to pay for the bus safety program, that doesn't go away. If they lose the case here in front of a judge, they have to pay that ticket and they have to pay court fines. And I think everybody's wish is that it's punitive enough to keep people from ever wanting to go around a school bus again. So the suggestion is $25 administration fee, which apparently is very popular, a $25 admin fee, and then the $150 for the first offense, $300 for number 2, and $450 for number 3. And that's what our judge felt was reasonable based on what, if it had been a movie violation, they would have charged. So that's what he is recommending. And, you know, the difference is that this bus safety program means that somebody has to come in and we're going to have to prosecute him in the courtroom. And I mean, if you had to pay $250 and then another $150, I don't know that hopefully you never come back. Certainly I won't contest it again, right? I would guess if they had to pay a court fine. But how do you feel about that? Because it's something that we're going to have to decide relatively soon, so we can introduce them to the prosecutor and get the ball rolling and get registered as such. They don't need to know our court fines, but our judges do. Anybody have any comments about it?
Right in line with what is already in place, right?
Yeah.
And the fact,
Yeah.
and the fact it was suggested by someone as a judge recommending it, I think it's behooves us to
listen.
follow that guideline.
Yeah.
And accept it.
Okay. And there are some people that have said it should even be worse, because we definitely want to deter. Some people are asking that the fines, if the court fine, even be more, because they want it to be as punitive as possible, because it is a really bad thing to do, to go around a school bus. But since this was in line, Judge Panko, he said, let me just read you. The town board has to vote on it, but let me read you what's in the book and what we all have to abide by.
Yeah.
So this might be a good guideline for us. How do you feel, Councilman?
I feel it's something that it's going to be. I feel like this is being implemented across the state.
Yeah.
It started, I think, up in Pine Plains at first as a
Right,
trial,
yeah.
which I think is going pretty well with
Yep.
everything. So now it's trending down to us. So it's in line with the fines for anything else. And it's a huge safety thing. And I think it'll set a precedence on people acknowledging not to go past that school bus. So
Yeah.
it'll get the word out.
I think you're right. Now, Arlington School District has already opted in, as has Wappingers. And then Pine Plains, we know they were the first. So it's making its way around, and then
Yeah.
Millbrook and the ones that touch us are like in line.
Okay. Well, I think the bottom line is it protects kids, and that's why I think it's a very good program,
Yeah.
and anything that protects our kids is worthwhile.
It's critical. Okay. And these fines are higher than some, like Pine Plains is 93, but that's the same as a ticket that you get. So I think the judge thought this would be stronger. So I mean, I feel comfortable with all your comments. If we can make a motion to agree with the fine of 150, 300, and 450 for first, second, and third offenses and a $25 admin fee, we could agree to that tonight and then submit it.
I have a question. There's no points with these that's associated with you?
No, because they're not writing a ticket for the driver. They're only taking a photo and then they look at the license plate and the letter goes to the owner of the car. They don't know who's driving the car.
Because I know usually when points are associated with something, people will tend to try to fight things. That's why the only reason I was asking with the points. I don't think it's a great idea to protect the kids, but I'm just thinking are a lot of people going to be fighting this and not just paying the fine and ended up in court?
Well, what they said on the presentation that I had to go to with Dick Thurston and Walker, we were going to the same one. What they told us was that the only reason that people fight it, which is it varies from 3 to 5. Owen Rafter at County Planning said it's closer to 3%, which is quite low. He said that that's 138 cases in the whole county. And it's very low. And the only reason that they found that those people fight it are because they didn't go to the trouble to look at the photos that are online. When you see your letter, you get a letter and they say $250, and then they say, go to this website and see the photo of your car. They say a small percentage of people don't bother, and they just say, I'm fighting. And he said, but when you see the photos, it's pretty definitive. So that's why that number's low, but you're right, they're not. So there's a motion on the table to accept that fee exchange. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? Everybody feel comfortable? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Nope. Okay, that motion carries. We'll pass that on tomorrow to all the people that need to be involved. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, new business. Now, this is our heavy lifting for tonight. This is the annual review of policies and procedures. Before we later on make a motion to approve them, I thought there's a couple of things that maybe we'd like to talk about. Some nits I found that weren't very big, but I thought maybe you'd want to discuss them. I'm just going to go in this order, if you don't mind, that they were packed in.
Okay.
The town of Unionville procurement policy. The change that was made to this one was, and I'm going to make that the word purchases a lowercase
7,
p.
right?
Yeah, that's on page 7. And that was suggested by Jeff Battistoni for best value purchases, lowercase p. Please refer to the town code chapter 65. And then I attached the resolution of adoption referring to chapter 65 and our best value proposition. Kevin Derlin remembers well. We worked on that the first week you were elected, I believe. So that resolution will explain what best value is. And then aside from that, the procurement policy looks good. Anybody have any more comments about that? Adding that? Okay. So the next one up is the town of Unionville Public Employer Health Emergency Plan. Now, I noticed in this one that we obviously have to update some names. There's a change in personnel. And 2 of them are at the county level on page 15 and 16. And the other thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention that I think we're going to talk about later in the agenda. And that is so on page 12, and we had approved this back then, and this was right in the middle of COVID, and this particular plan is applicable anytime there's some sort of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease. So this could be something we use over and over again. So it behooves us to update it every year. But the one thing I wanted to point out, because it's on our agenda to talk about tonight, on page 12 under employee and contractor leave, it says in here, it is our policy will not be charged with leave time if testing is mandated by the town. But then it also says, according to the New York State law at that time, and I don't know if that's changed, I haven't checked, but all employees are entitled to 1 leave time of up to 14 calendar days as per New York paid leave for COVID. And I think, remember when this first came out, 14 days was the quarantine?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So now it's 5. So I just want us to So in this particular thing, I think we could change that to every year you adjust it to whatever quarantine may be associated with the communicable disease that
Yeah.
you're,
So the state changed it from 14 to 5.
the state changed it. They're following CDC
Okay,
guidelines.
all right.
So that would mean on here, we should probably change this to 5, but then when we talk about, or we could reverse the order of this, there's
We
a,
just changed it to current CDC guidelines.
CDC or state guidelines?
for paid time leave. So do we want the leave to be consistent with the quarantine is what we're saying?
Yeah, with the state.
So let's say quarantine, that word's not in here. So it just shows entitled to 1 leave time. So we'll say 1 leave time consistent with quarantine mandates by the CDC or the state.
Yeah.
In case we, then we could announce if, that we feel.
And you don't have to change it every time the number of days change.
Perfect. Okay, page 12, under employee and contractor leave, all employees are entitled to 1 leave time of up to 14 calendar days. And in this case, we're going to say 1 leave time up to or consistent with the quarantine time as, I'm not going to say mandated because we hope they're not always mandating, but as recommended.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, recommended by the CDC or the state of New York. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
So that means when we go to discussion about COVID time off policy for employees, 11.3, what's been happening is like just this year, one of our, whose name will remain hidden, one of our employees, so when they got COVID, tested positive, very sick, stayed home, and it was 5 days. It was like, that number is actually a good number, 5 full days. And then when they came back, they took, 3 days of leave, 1 day of personal time, to get the 5 days so that they'd get paid. So I think in this case, I'm sitting there thinking if they got COVID one more time, they wouldn't have personal days. They wouldn't, they wouldn't have.
Use up all their time.
Yeah. So we need to implement this
Right,
and be
plus this
fair.
encourages them to not come when they're sick,
Right.
to jeopardize
Good
other
point.
people's health.
Yeah. So
So
we'll
that's
talk.
everyone.
Yeah, so if we want to change the order on this, I think what we would say is that our employees should get the 5 days, which is a current mandate, which is consistent with CDC and New York State guidelines, that we would give them paid leave for that, so they're not eating up that time or coming into work worse.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that, Councilman? Does that make sense? Because, have a business, so you've been dealing with this for a long time. So the motion would be for this one, that in 2022, that we pay our employees up to 5 days, which is the consistent quarantine time recommended by the CDC and the state of New York, frankly. We pay them that if they're out for COVID. Is there a second?
A second.
That comfortable wording?
Yeah.
Just one other question.
Yeah.
So with these times off now, things have gotten a lot less than what they used to be with the 14 days. So
Yeah,
can they split that up? What if they, they test positive on a Thursday and they miss 2 days of work and then
yeah.
they're
Like
I think
negative?
it's 5 days after you test positive, so.
No, but I'm saying, can the 5 days be broken up so they don't
Yes.
have to work into their personal time
Yeah,
and stuff?
no, I
right? It
think
doesn't
you're
have to
right.
be consecutive 5 days.
So no, it doesn't have to, it doesn't say consecutive. We won't.
Okay.
Make sure that you're right, that when we implement it, like if it was Thursday, Friday,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say town hall employee, town hall's closed on Friday, so they don't work on Friday. So
Mhm.
let's say they tested positive on Wednesday. By Sunday, they're 5 days.
They're
is up.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah, so they would only have used 2 days.
that's right. But then
That's
if
what
they
you
get it again, they could already take their other 3 days
Yes.
later in the year. If unluckily they get
I would
it
think if they
again.
get it again, they get 5 days from when they test positive. If you
I
don't
don't
want them coming back when they're sick.
Well, the wording here, so let's go back to this, because we have 2 things we're straddling here.
Mhm.
One benefit for the employees, and then this policy. So the policy says all employees are entitled to the 1 leave time up to the consistent quarantine time as recommended by the CDC in the state of New York. Now, do you want to change that to not 1, because this says 1. That's your point, I think.
Why don't we just keep it at 5 days instead of writing
You're right.
1?
Yeah. I
See,
agree.
because
I mean,
5
max it
days
out
are
at 5
not,
days.
Max
Yeah.
it out at 5.
Well, right, today it's 5.
Max it out at
the quarantine level.
That's right, to the CDC
Yeah,
guidelines.
'cause they could go back to 14. if
That's
things
right.
got worse.
Don't put one time, just say they're
Yeah.
entitled to
To
For the
leave
correct
time
quarantine
up
time.
to and consistent with quarantine time as recommended by the CDC and the state of
That's
New York.
right.
So we take the one out. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so there's two, let's just go through this. Motion on the table is that in 2022, we offer the employees leave time, paid leave time of 5 days, consistent with the current quarantine as recommended by the CDC and the state of New York for employees. That was, there was a second by
Yes. by me.
Councilman Welsh. Let's vote on that first. Is there any more discussion about that? All in favor of that benefit, that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, so that passes. So that motion is good. And then let's go back to this policy because we'll vote on these at the end with the changes. The policy will say on page 12, and this policy is the Public Employer Health Emergency Plan. All employees are entitled to leave time up to and consistent with quarantine time as recommended by the CDC or the state of New York. Not up to, I'm just going to say consistent.
Mhm.
All employees are entitled to leave time consistent with the quarantine time as recommended by the CDC or the state of New York. You're letting it sink in. I'm going to read it one more time. I'm going to make a motion and on page 12. We changed this line to lead. I'm going to try to do this right. I think I've changed it all three. Okay, let me try. All employees are entitled to leave time consistent with quarantine time as recommended by the CDC or the state of New York. And then the final phrase of that says for COVID-19.
Yes.
That could be for any communicable disease.
I was just gonna say that. Shouldn't be
I-
exclusive to COVID-19.
Yeah, because this is going to be our ongoing,
Yeah, but then it just
Only
becomes,
for-
yeah, but then that just,
Quarantine.
but
or
then that
CDC
just comes a sick day.
well, you know what? It's COVID-19 now. If there's another communicable
I'd rather
disease next
change it
year,
if
we'll
there's
change
another
it for that disease, for
Yeah.
that
I
pandemic.
think I leave COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay, one more time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so on page 12, make a motion that all employees are entitled to leave time consistent with the quarantine time as recommended by the CDC or the state of New York for COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Got it?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, motion carries.
Yeah, I think that's a step forward for everybody.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we can implement that right away. And as Councilman Gusikoff suggested, either way it'll be done. Okay, next up is Town of Unionville credit card use policy and procedures. This has been a very good policy for us because it's kept all of our expenses very tight and very organized. And the only thing I see, I wrote under procedures, and I don't have page numbers. I think we should add page numbers for here. So under procedures, it says under C, which is like the third page, each authorized cardholder must sign an agreement to accept the town credit card prior to issuance of the credit card. Forms, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. The fact of the matter is we don't issue anybody a credit card anymore. The town clerk has one. The town supervisor has one. It
Mhm.
says, and it's given to a person for a purchase. It's not issued to them in their name. And all aggregated purchases or regular purchases have to be done by the town clerk, which is the beauty of it, because she gets all the purchase and can manage it. So this policy has been a real helpful thing. And so there's nothing wrong with C. I think when I was looking through it, I thought maybe, no, I was just noting that nobody gets a credit card in their own name. So there's only 2 available. Okay. So this policy to me is in good shape. Anybody have any nits or anything you wanted to change?
No.
So the credit card use policy and procedures is good. Okay. Town of Unionville financial control policies and processes. Now on page 3, number 6, we no longer have a shared service agreement with the town assessor and the assessor's clerk, which is
Right.
listed here as an automatic payment. So I think we'll just, the change for page 3 would be that we make the automatic payments consistent with those which are approved by the town board in the organization meeting every year. that make sense?
Yeah,
Because that was the one, make the automatic payments consistent with those approved, because those we talk about, and those approved in the org meeting, the organization meeting every January. Because if this list changes, we don't have to run over and change it right away. It'll just, okay?
yeah.
All right, so the motion, and I didn't have anything else in here. Did anybody else have anything? I didn't have anything else to change. I just have a couple of things I want to check on after rereading them, which is good.
Yeah.
It's always good. These are a helpful exercise. Okay, so the motion then, on page 3 of the financial control policies and processes, in number 6, in the sentence including shared services payments and that whole list, rather than have that listed out, it doesn't vary by much, but here's two examples. The motion is to make the automatic payments mentioned in number 6 of voucher processing consistent with those approved by the town board in the organizational meeting every January.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion about that? Everybody got it? Okay, then we're consistent all the way across. Okay, all in favor of that motion and second?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. Terrific. On financial processes, and this is a one pager that we did March 18th, 2021, and there's a section for the town clerk and the tax collector on the back. And we did these because we've learned through an audit that went on early on about 2 previous administrations, and we learned a great deal from, that everything should have, everybody needs to be seconded by somebody else to make sure that, like nobody wants to sit in a room and count cash alone, right? We don't want to do that. So we've got a double process for everything. But one thing that I noticed on here that we haven't done in a long time, and that's the last bullet page on the town clerks, which the town clerk bank account will have 2 signers, town clerk and deputy town clerk. The town clerk bank account does not have 2 signers. Now, the town clerk, you might want to explain to everybody, what do you actually write checks for out of the town clerk's checking account?
Yeah, there are very few. I write it to obviously the supervisor each month for the town clerk fees that I collect, and that's the large majority of my money. I also send a check to Ag and Markets for any dog fees that I've collected. And if they do a marriage license, I would write a check to the State Department of Health. The only other vendor that takes money from us, DEC, but they do it by automatic bank payments. So those are the only up to 3 checks that I write. So it's not like I'm issuing refunds to residents or anything like that.
Right. So there's not a great deal. Yeah. So I think that if, based on our experience in the limited check writing by the town clerk, having a secondary, plus we were without a deputy clerk for months when Elizabeth retired.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I don't think it's necessary in this case, because we also keep the bank account. We keep a copy of the town clerk's bank account, and then it's checked by the finance officer every month.
Right.
So we have double check on everything. So if it's okay, I believe that this is redundant. I mean, it's not redundant, but unnecessary.
Yeah, unnecessary.
And so I would propose the final bullet point on financial processes
Be deleted.
under the town clerk be deleted, the phrase "and deputy town clerk." We'll have 1 signer, the town clerk. All right, I'd like to make a motion. The town clerk bank account will have 1 signer, town clerk only. Remove the second phrase. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, any discussion about that? Everybody comfortable?
Mhm.
All right, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Aye, no. Okay. So that's consistent with our practice.
Now procurement, right?
Well, no, we already did that. We did that. We're doing cash handling procedures for the rec department.
Okay.
The tax collector stuff on the back is all consistent with what we do on that one. Now, cash handling procedures. We did this last May. We went to painstaking detail to go through what has to be done with concessions and petty cash. And we have upgraded all of they had a lot of cash floating around in the recreation department. And so we have an appendix with cash receipts, and we have a daily pool pass log. all that has to happen with this, I think it's in really good shape, is that we send it back out to the director and the assistant director and make sure they train their people and help them train their people on these processes. So I believe this one is in pretty good shape if nobody found any suggestions.
It's so comprehensive, I couldn't find anything that really looked
I know.
anyway deficient. I think
Yeah.
we've covered every possible.
Yeah, that was a real fun meeting.
Situation.
I remember.
But I
So-
missed it.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, we got it done. So if there are no other changes, I'd like to make a motion that, oh, no, we'll do that at the end. We're just right now. No, that, we were making motions as we went, so we can't, I see what you were saying now. I'd like to make a motion that we pass the cash handling procedures for the recreation department as is, approve it as is. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No, none opposed. So this motion carries. Now we want to go back. I now I know why you were mentioning procurement. We made the change in procurement. We voted on that too, didn't we?
I don't think so. I think we said we'll do it in order.
We were going to go through them all, make changes and come back and pass them all
Yeah.
down where the motions are. Okay, let's just keep going. We've done this one, but we can finish up. We have the systems usage and security policy from 2018. This one needs changes as in, for sure, Sullivan Data Management is now logically. And I don't even have, I've got one person's address. I would have to update the.
That's really not a procedure change. It's just
It's just administrative,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more of a, just putting a new company
name,
name
and yeah.
and address. But the rest of this, if you read it, you could, I mean, this is the kind of thing where you could add pages and pages but I think there's a lot of in here. There's the social media policy, email access and usage. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Now,
Yeah.
the one thing that we have to do is make sure that we pass it out to everybody and get their acknowledgement of the receipt of it, along with the employee
Yeah, that's
handbook.
very critical. Yeah, it reads very well, all of this stuff.
Yeah, when we did, remember, we spent a lot of time on these things. Okay. So this is the last one, and I'll ask Andrea to tell me, confirm if we've done all of them, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Unionville Information Systems Usage and Security policy as is, with minor administrative changes as in name and address of company, which was because Sullivan Data was bought out. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Any discussion about that? No, nothing? Okay. All in favor of passing this motion as with the minor changes of address and name?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Okay, that motion passes. I just want to make sure. That we pass the motion for the procurement. Maybe Jeff's paying attention. We talked about in public employer, we voted on that, the health plan, emergency plan. I know we've just voted on credit cards, so did we,
Yeah, I think the only one that was just the procurement, which was, of course, Jeff Battistoni's suggestion about.
right, and
referring
I
to-
think that's, I bypassed it.
Yeah.
The rest
all right.
were all voted on.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Town of Unionville procurement policy, including the addition on page 7, the new line under paragraph H. Is there a
Yes.
second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, all in favor, or is there any discussion about that? I think we covered it. All in favor of that motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, that motion carries. All right, so we've
That's all
got,
of them.
that's all of them that we were
Very good.
reviewing for this meeting. It's a lot, but we've got some minor tweaks. What I'll do is we'll make those tweaks probably tomorrow, and then I know you're dying to get these. We're going to email them all back to you, and then they'll be put on the website. Okay, we won't print them again, but just so that you have them. Okay? Thank you very much. So that's a big, important piece done. We've got some more coming down the road. Now, the next discussion has to do with the CAC's recommendation for use of a $5,000 designation grant that we get from NYSERDA. Excuse me, I just dropped the mask on the floor.
I was going to go back to the TV thing,
Which thing?
planning board.
I believe, did we pass it?
Yeah.
Yes, let's go back to that. You want to do that? Yeah, let's do that first. Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so per Councilman Derlin's observation and the consistent with the discussion that he and I have had is that the residency requirement for planning board members is right now consistent, pretty fairly well known by every town, which is that the members typically are electors of the town, which means they live in the town. And I've spoken to our attorneys, and I've also spoken, the Association of Towns had told us that the way to change that, and that other boards do change residency requirements. And basically the way you have to pass a local law establishing the requirements for the appointed office. The Association of Towns said the town board can adopt a local law expanding the required residency for planning board members. And to please note in this particular law, apparently the local law that was adopted here pursuant to municipal home rule law, section 10, it grants local governments the authority to enact a local law regarding the qualifications of local officers. Furthermore, this local law recognizes that the state legislature amended Public Officers Law 3, adding a new subdivision, number 24, expanding the residency requirements for any appointed public office in the town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, thereby rendering Public Officers Law a special law with respect to any appointed town officer. So the idea, and when Kevin and I were talking about it, and I think our current chair who took over after Kevin left the chair of the planning board, you know, there aren't that many people that raise their hands for this particular board because tell people a little bit, it's complicated. I mean, that's a hardworking
It's a lot of
board.
work. Yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
do homework.
About the town.
Yeah,
And
and the
make proper decisions.
code, yeah, it's a big deal.
The code.
Engineering
There's a lot
backgrounds
going on.
help. Yeah.
With a
Mhm.
small pool as it is of residents. Sorry.
We have a small pool already and we don't have a huge town as it is. And it's hard enough to find volunteers probably in a big town. We're certainly having that problem here. You know, Andrea has obviously had that problem.
Right, with the deputy town clerk, yeah.
Town
We got
clerk,
lucky.
so, you know, there's only so many times you're gonna get lucky until you run out of luck, I think. So
Mhm.
Right,
the bigger the pool that we can pull from, while the people are still stakeholders, you know, in the town,
right. Stakeholder is a good word.
I think it's wise to
Yeah.
explore
And just think
all the
about it.
options.
When we changed we allowed the deputy town clerk to become from a larger pool. In other words, didn't require them to be resident. That's one job. On the planning board, there's 7 to 9 members.
Yeah.
So you're constantly, you know, that rotates. And-
Yeah, it's the need for replacement.
So Kevin and I spoke about, Kevin, you can help me with this writing, and this is consistent with what Jeff Battistoni and I spoke about earlier today. And so if the potential candidate is somebody, I like that word, is a stakeholder, as in, we talked about, Jeff Battistoni and I spoke about that, you know, they could also be a renter and live in a house. They still have a stake in the town. They don't necessarily have to be a taxpayer, but if they reside on a parcel where part of the parcel is in the town of Unionville, but the residence is in an adjoining town that's bisected by the town line, then, and if the person is otherwise fully qualified, they should still be able to be considered an applicant, because the fail-safe is what? The town board.
Town board.
So,
We ultimately get to make the decision, so.
yeah. And if they're not-
This is the pool for us to make that decision.
Mhm.
yeah. So those were the two things that, or they're really 3 points. It's, you know, that this is not, what we're doing is we're looking at some parcels have a house in an adjoining town, and half their land or part of their land is in Unionville, but they still really align with Unionville as a stakeholder. And they are very well qualified for what we need today. And then the future board will define what otherwise fully qualified means, because it might tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're trying to do. And if we agree to that, then we would put that into a resolution of adoption for next month, and then have a public hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, a resolution of introduction, sorry, and then have a public hearing.
Mhm.
I got a question on this whole thing. I know we spoke about before. Do we ever put out a public notice to fill this position yet?
Yeah.
Just
Several
on the website, newspaper, or?
on the website, we use Unionville Mail.
Okay, because I find, you know, we got approximately 4,600 residents in town. And I find it hard to believe that we are not getting at least 3 or 4 applicants possible, from 4,600 people in the
Kevin
pool.
can speak to that. You were chair for
It
6
was
years.
pulling out of the same pool of.
I mean,
people.
me personally, I would prefer to pull from the town first before we start changing town law, town rule to get somebody that's a non-resident to fill a position. I mean,
Well, you know what?
I don't think we have exhausted all the possibilities of putting it out there and trying to get people, residents to sign up or stand up.
So.
Well, we're not making it-
Resolution of introduction, we can vote accordingly. That's the way I look at it. I mean, we can't get people to be on the CAC, and that's a lot less complicated than a planning board. And we had one person raise their hand.
I mean, it's just with the numbers, it just, if you look at 1% of 4,600 people, that's 46 people. I mean, a fraction of a percent,
Just won't
Well,
get that.
a fraction of a percent, that's all you need. I mean, it's just, I can't believe that you wouldn't get 3 or 4
Now,
people.
you
that
do
would raise their
realize
hand.
that some people are not fully qualified.
Uh,
We haven't
yeah.
had anybody, we only
There's
had
gotta
one
be
person raise their hand, but out of that.
There's got to be
pool,
somebody in town that's qualified.
Oh, there are, yeah, but they're busy. It just, I mean, it seems like
There's
everybody.
no doubt.
I mean, do we
It does
canvass?
sound crazy, but
I mean, I think if we canvass
that's just the way it goes.
Well, I think
And
our
put it out
recycling
there.
center is a prime example. We kind of ran through all the people in town that wanted to work there. We ran out of people that lived in town and want to work there. We had to get 2 people from Beekman.
Yeah, I mean, that's an employee versus a board member, though.
It's a much easier job than reading.
But it's filling vacancies.
Yeah, but they're not shaping and directing the direction of the town. They're just there to fill a job, to be an employee, to do a job.
Yeah. that's
They're
true.
not creating how the town is the planning for the town and the future for the town.
I think when we talked about this, we also discussed that the people will still have to interview before us. If somebody's an engineer and lives just on the other side of this wall, but still owns property in here and they're plenty qualified,
Yeah, but I
it's
mean,
worth at least giving them a shot.
but
And the choice ultimately lands with us anyway.
yeah, but I mean, the flip side is how many engineers do we have in town? How many surveyors? How many people that would fit the criteria? There's got to be.
There's probably
There's got to be a
10
bunch.
Say there's 10 engineers in town and 10 don't want to do it.
Well, I mean, there's some.
It's a time requirement. I mean, especially on.
Kevin, how many new,
paper.
I mean, it's
What I'm saying is I would
Kevin,
like-
hold on a minute.
I'd like to try to
It's very
exhaust-
unusual to get people to raise their hand these days. It's
Oh,
hard.
I know,
because
it's
they're
almost
very
volunteer work.
committed.
It's almost volunteer work,
Yeah.
but I would like to try to exhaust us getting a resident to do the job before we go change rules, change laws, and then go outside the town.
But we're not going outside of town. These people own land in the town. This is the way we're writing this. People would own property in the town. They're not going outside of town. And they also.
They
This
don't-
is not saying we're
they
not
don't-
gonna exhaust that prior to giving somebody else a shot. I mean,
But-
we're not
but I
talking
mean,
about adding a lot of residents
but
to
at
the
that
pool, but
point,
we're
you're-
trying to maximize the pool.
But at that point, you're a vacant landholder. You have no improvements, nothing to lose. You have just vacant land. You're
No,
not a
they
resident.
have to have a residence on that same parcel. It's
But
just
if
that
they're
maybe the
resident-
bisection of the line, see, the way the electric rule works is that if your house is here, even if a corner, the majority of your house is, if your bedroom is here, you're gonna be in and out of joining town. Even if a corner of your house is here, the rest of your land is here, but that's just the way the law is.
But you're
So You still have a stake in Unionville.
you're gonna reside either in one town or the other. You can't reside in both towns.
Sure.
Legally, but if you're a stakeholder, or if your bedroom is one, people do feel aligned with one or the other. You seem very interested in this position. Are you interested in the planning?
No, I'm just saying, I'd like to try to find somebody in town first before we start changing rules. I mean, the rules have been the same since the inception of the town, and here we are changing rules to try to
match the
accommodate
times.
somebody that's not a resident.
So I'll tell you what we'll do. I think we'll run some more ads in the meantime. We'll get the resolution of introduction ready for the next meeting, and then we'll have a public hearing. We'll see what goes, and meanwhile, we'll run the ad again and see if anybody responds. That way we'll kind of hit all cylinders, but we won't lose too much time, because we do have an empty spot.
Yeah.
All right, with that being said, let's move on. Thank you for that discussion. COVID time, expanding that. We're going down to the emotions. We approved all the board. The next up is motion approving CAC's recommendation for use of the $5,000 designation grant from NYSERDA. And no chuckling about this for those of you who may not be familiar with it, because George Kolb was laughing a little bit today, but there were a couple of ideas that were floated by NYSERDA. They had a list, and then our CAC took that list, added some other things to it, and then I walked through all of them from a financial cost and what we could get done quickly, because they're hoping to get more awards in the future. The recommendation is that the town board agree with a composting toilet up at the equestrian center. And the reason that that's a good thing is that we had to, number one, we rented a porta potty up there all summer because they, as you heard earlier, the equestrian center had one of the busiest summers ever, had a lot of people, and we needed an ADA compliant one because we had a couple of people in wheelchairs. You want them to come up and enjoy. Yeah. So a composting toilet, you're not using any electricity. It's lower maintenance. The park maintenance guys have done them before, actually. They're very qualified. Ed Kading's done them before. So we have a lot of expertise. There's going to be a design committee, a couple of ladies on the CAC and Loretta Ryan. We're all going to get together and have a group and work with Jake and maybe Tom St. Ange, who are terrific builders and think it would be fun. And it'll be rustic looking and rural looking, be cute over there, but we'll no longer have that expense of the porta potty coming in and going. The porta potty was so bad there this summer. It was so old. I don't know. They brought us a really old one that the women up there preferred using the outhouse. That's how bad it was. So the idea of building a brand new now a composting toilet by itself is like $1,100. So then what happens is they build the 6-foot area around it. Jake said to get the wheelchair in. And they have a little outer area. They can build whatever they want. I guess that'll be the design team. They can have a mirror and everything on the other side. So it could be very cute and charming, but it serves a need up there, and it's in keeping with the way the place looks and in how we want it to, to serve the residents and the visitors. So what do you think? Is that a good idea? It was almost a pollinator garden, and that's a lot of work.
It's one of our success areas, and this is going to further the success of that facility.
Yeah.
And keep our costs under control. Once it's in, there's no more real large costs associated. Like
no, and the maintenance, Jake told me not to worry about it.
After a 6-month period.
Well, the porta potties are $125 minimum a month, and then you go up from there when you have to get a bigger one. And we needed one for a wheelchair.
Runs quite a bit when you run it for the whole season.
Yeah, and it would be a 6-month thing up there, if not longer.
Right. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay, and we've got 5,000. I don't believe the parks crew thinks we're going to go over that budget. Their labor is included. It'll be a labor of love on their part because I think it'll be fun. So anyway, it kind of hits all cylinders, and it's a project they could get done this year. And they really like to talk to us later about this pollinator garden at the solar development to make it beautiful. But that's a 2-3 year project. So, all right, would somebody like to make a motion that we accept the CAC's recommendation?
All right, I'll make a motion. We accept the CAC recommendation and use that grant money to provide a composting toilet facility at the equestrian center.
That's terrific. Thank you, Councilman Derlin. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No? Okay. Composting toilet it is. Motion passes.
I've been there several times this past year, and it's been very busy.
Packed. A couple of times. Those shows, some of them are really.
Yeah.
And she's got things spread out. There's food truck and, candies, so people have had a good time just sitting there and enjoying the beautiful view. So.
Yeah, so no, I think it's a good.
It'll be a good thing.
Plan.
All right, thank you all. All right, next up, we have a resolution directing the town assessor to grant the exemptions in 2022. Everybody, we discussed this before. Basically, what this says is even though just to give a little background, because it's a long resolution, this is the resolution that came from the state. But even though our assessor had already sent out the forms to file for your exemption again, then subsequent to that, the governor came out with the ability for the town to say, if you don't want to submit your form to get the exemption, the assessor is automatically going to give it to you, unless there's some reason the assessor has to believe that that somebody's moved or it's changed and all that. So, Councilman Derlin, would you mind reading resolution 2020? Sorry.
Resolution number 20 of 2022. Resolution directing the town assessor to grant exemptions in 2022. Whereas on December 26, 2021, Governor Kathy Hochul issued Executive Order Number 11 declaring a state disaster emergency for the entire state of New York due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas this state disaster emergency has resulted in limited hours in municipal offices in the town of Unionville and rendered senior citizens and individuals with disabilities residing in Unionville homebound. These factors combined have made it difficult, if not impossible, for many in these populations to file their real property tax exemption applications in person, which is often the preferred method of filing. And whereas in recognition of the above problems caused by the pandemic, Governor Hochul issued Executive Order Number 11.1 on December 26, 2021, thereby extending Executive Order Number 11. This extension of the Governor's Executive Order modifies Subdivision 7, 7A, and 8 of Section 459-C of the Real Property Tax Law, and Subdivisions 5, 5A, 5B, 5C, and 6 of Section 467 of the Real Property Tax Law, the effect of which permits the governing body of an assessing unit, for example, the town board of the town of Unionville, to adopt a resolution directing the assessor to grant exemptions on the 2022 assessment roll to all property owners who receive such exemptions in 2021 assessment roll. For example, senior citizens and individuals with disabilities with limited income, thereby dispensing with the need for such persons to file renewal applications to request such exemptions for this year only. And whereas Executive Order 11.1 further allows the governing body of said assessing unit in any such resolution at its option to include procedures by which its town assessor may require a renewal application to be filed if he has a reason to believe that the owner who qualifies for the exemption on the 2021 assessment roll may have since changed his or her primary residence, added another owner to the deed, transferred the property to a new owner, or died. And whereas pursuant to said executive order, the town board of the town of Unionville wishes to adopt such resolution directing the town assessor of the town of Unionville to grant exemptions on the 2022 assessment roll to all eligible senior citizens and individuals with disabilities with limited income, and granting the town assessor of the town of Unionville the authority to require renewal applications for due cause as discussed above, utilizing procedures outlined below. Now therefore be it resolved pursuant to the authority granted by the Executive Order 11.1 issued by the Governor of the State of New York, that the town board of the town of Unionville hereby directs the town assessor of the town of Unionville to 1, grant exemptions on the 2022 assessment roll to all individuals who received the senior exemption on the 2021 assessment roll, and all individuals who received the exemption on the 2021 assessment roll because they were recognized as a person with disabilities and limited income, thereby dispensing with the need for any such individuals to file renewal applications for such exemptions, except that 2, the town assessor may, in his sole discretion, require a renewal application to be timely filed with his office if he has reason to believe that any such individual who qualified for the aforementioned exemption on the 2021 assessment roll may have since changed their primary residence, added another owner to the deed for the relevant property, transferred such property to a new owner, or died. If the town assessor requires such renewal application to be filed, he shall notify the owner of the subject property of such requirement by regular mail, with such notice shall contain instructions on how to file the renewal application. Said renewal application may be returned by mail or by making an appointment to drop off at the town assessor's office, 249 Duncan Road, LaGrangeville, New York, 12540.
Thank you for offering that resolution, Councilman. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Is there any discussion about that? So maybe it's pretty straightforward and it.
Just don't have them repeated.
Yeah, don't read it again. All right, no, it is a nice idea. Anybody else, any other comments? Thank you. All right, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gusikoff.
Aye.
Councilman McGivney.
Aye.
Councilman Durland.
Aye.
Councilman Welsh.
Aye.
Supervisor Moss.
Aye. Excellent. Okay. Resolution 20 of 2022 passes. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have a motion. Well, we'll discuss and offer this up in a minute. The motion is to approve the hiring of a library consultant for community engagement to assist with the determination of Unionville's interest in building a municipal public library above the senior center in Timor Park with the intention of pursuing a charter from the regents of the Department of Education, Albany, New York. That is the motion on the table. Let's have I would say we discuss it after a second.
Well, as we talked about it this week, having a consultant who is an expert in this field, who understands the whole thing, I think it would enlighten a lot of our citizens, because there seems to be a lot of people throughout the town who do not fully comprehend what's going on with this. For example, having our library chartered by the state education department automatically means it'll be part of the jurisdiction of Mid-Hudson Library.
Right.
So some people think we were trying to not connect with them and avoid them. But
Carol, yeah.
actually,
It's an
we'll be
important point.
right in with them as a full-fledged library as part of their organization. So I think having this consultant give us the right direction to go in, to answer a lot of questions, and I think calm some of the residents that are a little uncertain about this, to see where this is headed, I think would be a good investment on the town, part of the town.
I agree. I think we have to do due diligence. Councilman Derlin said that earlier. We have to do due diligence. A lot of residents, and now it was a 56 to 44% vote that failed that referendum. That's not that far apart in a small town. So a lot of residents admitted that they were confused. But a lot of residents like the idea of a cyber cafe, not knowing what the implication. A lot of residents like the idea of finally standing alone and not arguing every 2 or 3 years with neighbors that some people think are charging too much. So there are a lot of opinions about it. I think the consultant will help us explore a long-term plan for the town that will answer all those questions. And it's worth any amount of money
Yeah.
to get to that, to get to those answers. And we need to hear from people who I look at as the silent majority. I mean, they don't come to meetings, they're not that active, but they have just a lot of opinions. People that, we need to hear from.
Yeah.
We need to hear from everybody, but some people are easier to hear from than others. So we need to hear from the shy ones too.
And I think there'd be a lot of civic pride if we had our own Unionville library, that people don't have to go out of town. If they want to go to the library, bring their kids to the library, it would be right within the town of Unionville.
Yeah. There are a lot of pros.
Yeah.
And we can explore the cons, but I think we have to do that. I mean, we have to go
Right.
through that exercise.
Yeah.
And I heard some wonderful pros from people. I know you did. I think we all did. And then there were the fears that were out there. And I think we just have to get it out all on the table and then go from there.
Especially considering that we have independent residents willing to go out and solicit donations to actually pay for this.
Oh, that's a good
is
point.
huge-
That would be answering Jane's question. So
huge
that,
thing.
yeah, the people that are running the fundraising campaign and they have a leadership committee, they are now a fully formed 501c3. And their interest, they have some plans. And one of the things that they suggested is that when they are permitted to go forth, because of some of the foundations and things that they also want to talk to, they would like to say that, well, I would say, I don't have it in writing, but what they are saying to us is that they would like to continue to raise the funds to ultimately pay us back for whatever this consultant costs. And that happens a lot, and they said that they'd be completely comfortable with that. As a matter of fact, if the town wasn't doing this, and we feel like we have to, especially after that referendum got put on the ballot, that the town is responsible to get to the bottom of this, we're going to do this anyway as a fundraising effort and pay for it out of those funds. So they're perfectly willing to try to do it this way. Okay, so Councilman Guscott, do you mind reading that motion again or proposing that motion?
I just have a quick question.
We're going to get to discussion. We're going to
Okay.
motion and we're going to second it and then we'll have discussion and then it'll be you.
Where's the motion?
Number 12.4,
12.4, resolution allowing,
motion.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
12.4.
Yep, 12.4.
I'm sorry.
You don't have it? You want me to read
No,
it?
I don't have it.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman. Let him read it because he's got it right in front. Sorry, I didn't. mean to
Motion
surprise you.
approving the hiring of a library consultant for community engagement to assist with the determination of Unionville's interest in building a municipal public library above the senior center in Timor Park with the intention of pursuing a charter from the Regents of the Department of Education, Albany, New York.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there a second? I'll second it. Now, discussion, Councilman McGivney.
Yeah, my question is, should we put a cap on price wise? I mean, is it gonna be a $5,000 consultant, 10,000? I mean, should
I don't think
we,
we can put a cap
just
on it.
budgeting wise, should we kind of say up to, like usually when we do stuff, we'll say up to a certain amount?
I can't, I wouldn't, I'd say no. My own one person's opinion is because it's a very specialized field and we don't have a good feel for what they're gonna charge. It's my guess it's gonna be 15 to 20. I don't know that. I haven't seen any numbers, but I know it's very specialized. From the people I've talked to, you know, that would not be uncommon. So I think what should happen is that we, like any other professional service that we pursue, we ask them to send us a proposal and the dollar amounts in there. And then we're gonna look at those separately.
Yeah, because I think it's a good idea to do that, but like I said, I would like to see a number before we approve that we're gonna spend that money.
How much do you think library consultants typically charge?
I don't know how in depth it is, you know, like I
But
said.
if you don't know that,
8,000,
then how can you put a
10,000.
cap on it, is what I'm saying.
But how can we approve to spend money that we don't know?
We're not approving to
It's like
spend
giving
money.
somebody an open blank check, here you go.
No, we're not approving to spend money. We're approving to go
That-
through this.
That's my
professional-
concern is that, you know, I don't want to approve
Right, I think,
an open line.
yeah, but that's a valid concern when the proposals come back. We analyze each of them then, and then you say, I don't like any of them because. you
Yeah,
know,
and then
that would be
we
your-
would hire, I guess, at that point, we would be hired.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
There's no, you're right, there's no specific here. This is, we're gonna go to the, we're gonna go through the motions to actually get these consultants to write us, and then ultimately our plan is to hire one. But we have no idea.
okay. I just want to make sure we weren't just hiring somebody not knowing what the
No.
cost is gonna be.
No, we're gonna start, we're
Okay.
going through the
Blank
process.
check.
All right,
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
you know how picky we are about money. around here.
Yeah, well, it's seems odd
point.
for you.
Look at
Good
your
point.
salary and you'll realize.
Yeah, no, good point. All right, so there's a motion, there's a second. Great question that we will be addressing in the future when the proposals come in. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. Then this motion carries and we will pursue that path and then we'll revisit the packages. Did you want to say something?
It's too late now.
Well, you don't get a vote. You could talk whenever you want.
Earlier, you said that I would have a chance to speak to this issue and you pulled it through, so.
No, Mrs. Tillman, there was a section on the agenda.
Meetings with this high-priced consultant.
This is the time to speak about town issues. I mean, town agenda items was earlier when Mrs. Geisler spoke.
And I attempted to speak and you said later.
No, you were helping her back to the table.
You also told me later.
You just waved, I don't want to argue with you, but you just waved your hand and I said, no. Good.
I just pretty much, no, I really don't.
Okay, I think that's fair. Is there any other?
Is this in the budget?
This is the
for last
approve
year?
the budget adjustments, transfers, warrants, pay bills. Can I have a motion to pay the
I
bills?
make a motion to pay the bills.
Great. Is there a second? All right, all in favor of paying the bills? Say aye. Okay, now there's public comment on town issues. Would you like to speak? You're not on the list here, but I'm happy to have you speak.
Was this on last year's budget?
No. The referendum came up after that budget was passed and we have to deal with that. So we're gonna have to pay for it and we've got the ability to pay for it.
For the millionth time, the agreement between Ralph Connor and Wizzy was that the library would be on this property, not in the park.
This was in the park at that time.
This property was taken from the park,
Yeah, in the early 90s, not prior.
huh?
In the early 90s, just before we built the building. We got approval from the state.
And there was a public meeting and the agreement, so Ralph was not gonna make a stink then to make Wizzy look bad. So the agreement was made that the library would be on this property, not down below in one of the barns or in the park.
So Mrs. Tillman, we have 2 handwritten letters from Mr. Connor. He signed them and he was happy with either one of those suggestions. And you may have forgotten that part, and I wasn't here, but I've read about it. You may have forgotten the part where they were going to have a second floor on this building. It became too expensive. They cut the cost down to $750,000 or whatever it was to build it. That eliminated the ability to have a library on the second floor because the roof is too short. So Don Wisman wrote him several letters about number 2, about he signed up, both of them said either that would be a fabulous idea. Yeah, you may, but I think that given what we know, that the man really wanted a library, that is not really a valid point because we know he wanted a library. And you know that this is probably the closest he'll ever come to getting one. So let us go through the process. Let's talk to all the residents.
The library is not a park building. The library is a town building, so it belongs on the town property.
But the town.
Not
owns the
according to
park.
him.
I'm getting a psychic and I'm gonna bring Ralph back.
Okay.
But we'll show you the letters. I think it'll give you some comfort
No, I don't think I'm gonna be comfortable
with his own handwritten letter.
Go ahead, keep rolling.
Yeah, you're not buying it.
Not happening.
Can't be inflexible now. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I do, please.
Let's see if you could just unmute that, 'cause I can't.
Oh, no. Oh, we have another.
At last week's town board meeting, the town supervisor announced that I had failed to complete the emergency preparedness guidebook. And the implication was that I had failed to complete an assigned task, and that's not the case. About 2 or 3 months into the reworking of our existing booklet, the town supervisor came to me and asked me to suspend the work on this document because the state was going to require us to include pandemic preparedness as well. And the state was still preparing the guidelines for that. So that's the reason that there was never, the booklet was never completed. And I wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, you're gonna respond, attack my character now,
we have a,
and that's how you work.
Mr. Crane, you're on the list. Are you still on the board meeting? I'm not even sure. Oh, there he is. Hi, Mr.
Yeah.
Crane. Are you unmuted?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay.
Okay,
Could you introduce yourself and
Yeah.
tell us, we'd love to meet you. Go ahead.
okay. I'm Bill Crane. I'm actually a resident of your neighboring town, which is Beekman. And I've been urging Beekman to do more to protect trees. And I'd like to ask you to do this as well, to consider this as well. Trees, as you know, most of this, trees prevent soil erosion. They filter pollutants from the air. They keep streams and waters cool, and they add wonderful beauty to our surroundings. They provide homes for wildlife. And they provide all animals, including humans, with oxygen. It's very unlikely that animals, including humans, would be even on the planet if it were not for these large trees. And as they absorb oxygen, as they produce oxygen, they absorb carbon dioxide, and they are a major defense against global warming. So I think that all of us, every little town in our area, if we could get together and all do everything we can to protect trees, it would be a big defense against global warming and a big effort to save the planet for the future. I hope, to be specific, I hope like there's a clear cutting that you see here and there on Route 55 and near East Knoxon Road. You see a really bad clear cutting. I hope that the board can avoid this kind of thing in the future. And I hope the highway department will realize how precious mature trees are, how valuable they are at this point. And I just urge you to think of ways to protect them, extra special ways to protect them. Thank you for listening to my pitch.
That's wonderful. Thank you. You know, if you're always invited to come to our Conservation Advisory Council meetings too, because they're always looking for good ideas. And we do
Thank
have
you.
the Girl Scouts planting trees annually
Yeah.
in our reforestation. So that's a plus, but if you have other ones, we'd love to hear from you. So come on over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for participating tonight. We appreciate it. Okay, after public comments and since that was our final comment, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn. Second? All right, all in favor of adjourning? All right, we're going to sign off. Thank you.